I'm Lisa Rosenberg from Allison Worldwide here at Sport Beach today with Lindsey Abramo, CEO of World of Good Brands, and excited to have a discussion around everything that's going on in the publishing world. Lindsey, nice to see you.
So nice to see you in this beautiful air-conditioned space.
I know, that's the best. That's the best part. We're staying all day. So I wanted to kick us off this morning just to sort of ground everyone in the publishing industry and how the landscape is evolving, and how a business like World of Good Brands needs to pivot to stay current as that landscape constantly changes.
It's a good starting question. So World of Good Brands is just a year-old company. It was born out of a former holding company that dissolved called Leaf Group, which had a lot of heritage in the digital media space, predominantly programmatic. We broke off last year, rebranded the company into World of Good Brands, specifically to be able to be brand focused. When I think about the future, I think about all of the disruption that's happening in the industry right now, particularly in traffic referral sources, being wildly disrupted, and quite frankly, I just don't think are ever really coming back. It's going to be very, very critical to have very strong brands, that you have audiences that you own and contain. And so that's sort of what we've pivoted to do. So we focus on our top core brands, which is Well and Good, as well as a relaunch of our new local travel site called Only Interstate. And on top of our brand work, we also are really focused on experiential. So we have a home in Abbot Kinney that we use for different brand activations. And we are just finding that that is really driving a very high level of human connection.
No, absolutely. I think I'm going to get to experiential in a minute. But I wanted to talk first. I know you guys just did a study about the changing nature of human connections today. And I know experiential plays a big piece of sort of driving those connections. But I'd love if you could share just a few of the findings or results from that study. I think listeners would be interested.
Sure. So when we rebranded as World of Good Brands, our tagline is a human connections company. So it's something that I feel really passionate about, and it's something we infuse into everything we do, both internally and externally. So this year, we embarked on this new research study in partnership with research company Cassandra, and we wanted to really dive into what does human connection look like in the state of all of this industry transition, right? Changing digital consumption. Massive growth of AI, and then of course this loneliness epidemic that is all upon us, right? What are the connections that consumers care about most? And most importantly, how can brands help fuse those connections? So that was essentially the impetus to the study. Some of the bigger findings are kind of sad. One of them is that happiness has become aspirational, particularly for the younger generation. Definitely a product of the pandemic. We've all gone inward. We've really focused on self-care, which I think is really positive. We've also, seen a big rise in YOLO spending, which is like, oh, you only live once, let's go and spend all of our money. And then you immediately feel bad about it. And then the other piece is we're finding that people are still really using their phones and mindlessly scrolling to wind down at night. The other kind of particularly interesting stat that came out of this was Gen Z is really, really looking and yearning for human connection and want to make new friends, but the idea of going out and actually doing it gives them a tremendous amount of anxiety.
That's really interesting. And it'll be interesting to see, I don't know if you saw the news that came out this week about, in the US, them wanting to put a warning label on social media apps the same way they do on cigarettes. Which I thought was really interesting because of the damage they believe it's doing to the younger generation.
It's wild. I mean, there's a reason that so many people go on digital detoxes, right? It's a real thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So if we need to digital detox, then what is the role of in real life connections, and how does experiential factor into this desire to have more meaningful human connections? And what role can brands play in facilitating those?
So naturally, experiential is a great place to start when you're trying to really hone in on human connection. The majority of the consumers that we talked to in the study are very open and want to go to IRL events. The top reasons they want to go are to meet new people, connect more deeply with community, feel better about themselves in the wellness space and in self-care, and ultimately just drive better happiness, which is really great. And most of them want to attend these events, and they want brands to fuse these connections. They want to have brands make it easier for them to connect these different fandoms, which is I think really, really, really great for our business. For us, we have a house, as I mentioned, on Abbot Kinney, and we use this as our human connections incubator. We use it for our brands, and then we use it to bring other brands together to kind of build community, bring different fandoms together. We do focus a lot on self-care. We have a very calm space. It's almost the antithesis of like industry events. This is not for the gram. None of the people that come are looking for the perfect picture. One thing we actually found in the study was that wasn't even anywhere near the top reasons why anyone wanted to go to anything experientially anymore. So I thought that was really interesting. We're seeing a huge consumer fatigue in this like overhyped, like performative fun. The idea of living through the influencer at a Coachella, for example, is just sort of no longer. They're really looking for stronger human connections.
That's really interesting. There was actually a talk yesterday at the Palais, a Reddit talk, and they were talking about, the passion communities and the fandoms and the people who connect over a shared interest.
Yeah.
And while that's online, I do think there's a lot to be said for people being able to connect over sort of these shared passion points and shared interests. So I want to switch gears for a second and see if there's anything that you've learned either through the study or through your work with consumers about the role that AI is playing and how brands can also play with AI in connecting with consumers, particularly at a time where AI gets sort of a mixed rap. I mean, there's a great slogan on the one of the roofs along the Crozet here on the beaches. It's like, AI isn't creative, you are.
Yes,
so
good.
I love that.
So great. So in our study, I think surprisingly, every generation, because we definitely sliced the data through generations and looked at everything, very weary of AI still. Like, that surprised me that Gen Z was in that set. They're digitally native. They were born online, and they're weary of AI. They're not worried about it taking their job, but they are worried about how it's going to affect their daily lives. I think it's a product of just the unknown. We have not had enough adoption there for anyone to really feel comfortable about embracing broadly.
Do you think if it's is there a difference in Gen Z's mind between like ChatGPT, which I think a lot of that generation finds super helpful, and AI broadly?
Particularly in schoolwork and
writing?
Yes, exactly. I do think that, because that feels very entry, it feels very approachable. I think because it's changing, it being AI every day and so much, no one feels really confident in it yet of what else it could do. And I think it's just a stage of infancy in which we are. For us at World of Good Brands, like, we are still championing editorship. Like, we are all about the human editorial connection. We will never produce AI content, but this all sits on top of a layer of product and innovation and technology. So of course we're using it to be more efficient, but that is creating more space for human brilliance. A good example is we're relaunching the local travel site, as I had mentioned, called Only Your State. And everything is based in this like really curated list of like hidden gems in your area, essentially in your backyard. So it's still going to be curated by our amazing editors, but we're going to be launching with amazing new technology powered through AI that give you more seamless and immersive experiences when you're trying to find these things. So an example is we're going to have this new map called Routes, and you can put your point A and point B in.
Okay.
And then our editors have already curated all of the amazing hidden gems, but AI is going to power to say, okay, you want to go here to here? Here are all the little detours you can do to experience a really amazing time as your travels. So that's kind of a nice way of like building the two together.
Oh, that's excellent.
Yeah.
And I think, particularly for Gen Z, as they start entering the workforce and they figure out how to use AI to make them more efficient in some of the more mundane tasks that then allow them to do some of the more thinking type work that's more interesting. I think we'll start to see perhaps a shift as they get more accustomed to and figuring out how to use it. And I bet you they'll figure out how to do things before we will.
Oh, absolutely.
They're all digital natives. I know. So I just want to go back for a second to this whole notion of human connections. I think it's a really powerful one, but it can also be seen as sort of abstract or intangible. So how do we quantify what you're doing in sort of the human connection business for advertisers and for brands to get engaged?
Yes, so bold move in putting that as our tagline, because we are constantly trying to articulate what that means, both internally and externally. And so in partnership with this study, it was important to me that we came out with something actually tangible. So In partnership, we're also launching the Connections Score, which is a proprietary measurement framework that we are using to actually bridge that gap between the often intangible connections and between consumers and brands. For me, I kind of think about this industry is very savvy in measuring what's happening on the top of the funnel in the awareness, area, and of course the bottom of the funnel. The middle area is really where we're sort of lost, right? And that's where I really see this idea of consideration is married to human connections and the values that we're going to be using through our score. So the score is essentially an amalgamation of different connection values. So think things like loyalty, attention, evangelization. And so we weight about 5 different things, and they culminate together into a score out of 100 to show just how engaged and connected whatever it is that we did together, whether that is custom content or an event or our editorial. And then we essentially push forward to say, I would do more of these kinds of things, this is working, or here are some recommendations on things that you could do that would be more human connected. An example of how we think about this metric is like if we're going to measure an event, yes, we'll look at attendees, but we're also much more focused and weighted on like a dwell time. So really excited to bring this out. We are going to roll it out across everything we do, again, from like editorial to our audience development to our events, of course, and then to anything we're doing in our custom advertising business.
That's great. Is it a branded product or?
Yeah.
What is the name?
The Connection Score.
The Connection Score. Really cool.
Yeah.
I want to get a connection score after the end of my week here. See how well connected I am.
That's a great idea.
I've done.
That's a great idea. We'll run the
Lindsey,
numbers.
This was great. Thank
nice
you
to see you.
so much. So nice to see you, and thanks for the really enlightening conversation.
Yeah, thank you. Have a great can.
All right, you too.
Thanks.